One question I get all the time is, how do I find a mentor? Where do I find a mentor? Are there any good mentors out there anymore? And it's kind of a complicated question, but it actually has a simple answer. There are essentially three steps: one, find; two, ask; and three, train. So, finding a mentor. In some areas of law, this is easier than others. For example, if you have a litigation practice and your law firm specializes in, a particular kind of med mal or that sort of thing, then you will obviously meet other litigators who practice in your area of law, have similar kinds of law firms, have similar kinds of practices. And so identifying the people who are good at what they do, at least how they appear in court, and if they do appear in court, or in mediations, arbitrations, that sort of thing. Like, you're often meeting your colleagues on a regular basis. Also, the CLEs you do, if they're in your area, looking at who's giving the CLEs, the people you meet doing the CLEs. So you have lots of opportunities to identify potentials. If you have another kind of practice, for example, estate planning, and for example, you are considering developing a probate practice, because this is a natural extension from the estate planning into um, another practice area. And so you are looking for someone to be there and be available for questions along the way. Then for you to identify a potential mentor, you can also look at CLEs. You can also see who shows up in the probate court. You could even ask the clerks in the probate court who is good at what they do. And I often encourage attorneys to find someone who um, is older, as well as someone who is closer to where they are in age. Um, and this has nothing to do with where their practices are, or how they're developed. It is more about identifying potential referral partners or potential firms where you might be able to eventually buy their business if you develop a good relationship. And so it's kind of working on two levels. But in this case, you can also go outside of your geographic area. I truthfully don't believe that, you know, there's a zero sum game, that if I get a client, you lose a client. It's that sort of thing. I think that there's enough legal work to go around. And I know not every attorney works that way or thinks that way. And so it might be easier for you to develop a mentor with someone who practices in another city in your state, someone who is in a slightly different area of law. For example, if you want to do probates for pretty much your existing estate planning clients, and you specialize in estate planning for C suite executives in the oil field, for example, then identifying someone who also has a probate practice, but their client pool is quite different, might be very useful. And there's also a place when you're finding, and I encourage you to identify at least a few sources um, that is about vibe. It's about somebody you feel like you can connect with, somebody you feel like you can learn from, somebody you feel comfortable speaking with, somebody who is minimally available for this sort of thing. And so, also, I think that it's good to identify what exactly you're looking for mentorship for. For example, I know a lot of women who own their law firms who are looking for other women who own law firms. And so, this is a much smaller pool, it's harder to find. And so, for them, even going outside of their practice area might be great. And I think in some instances, this is really good because, for example, if you have your estate planning practice and someone else does primarily corporate law and that sort of thing, there are two things that don't necessarily compete unless that corporate lawyer also has an estate practicing arm. There are things that naturally go together. They make great referral partners, and this happens to be a female led firm, then that can be a perfect place for you to look for mentorship, to look for connection, to network in this particular way. And so that's the identification piece. And I think that it is good to go through and maybe identify different people who might be able to mentor for different things. I, we all, or people often have this idea that one mentor to rule them all. There's this one person who really makes a difference. And I think over time, there will be somebody who connects with what you need and you develop a relationship with that is more one on one. But in the beginning, when you're looking for mentors, especially if you don't have one right now, I think it's good to aim for maybe three, depending on what you're looking for. So, this is also a way to crowdsource information. It's also a way to see what vibes with you. It's a way to do. And then the third. So first we looked, right, and then we did the we found the person, and so now it's about ask. And I think the most awkward way to do this is to say, will you be my mentor? It has no boundaries, it has no limits. I would hesitate to say yes to that as a lawyer because I have my own firm, I have my own practice, I have my own employees that I'm supervising, I have my own caseload that I'm tracking, that I'm project managing. And you've just asked me this huge open-ended question where I have no idea what kind of commitment you're looking for, or if you are going to try and call me every day or get me to work your cases for you. I have no idea, especially if we don't have a previous relationship. So I think it's good to start small, start with something specific that is a true problem that you're having right now, and ask them, hi, so and so, I saw you in my law school alum newsletter, and I saw that you practice this kind of law in this state that I'm also practicing in, even though you're in another city. And I am going to be in town, and I would love to take you to lunch and ask you about your practice, this sort of thing. I if they respond, then you can go a little deeper. Um, I am really excited to talk to you. Specifically, I have been having difficulty in my practice managing my associates. And even though we are a family friendly firm and I truly believe with this and it aligns with my values, I'm having difficulty not micromanaging my legal associates and the paralegals. And so I was wondering if, while we meet for lunch, if you have any ideas about this, so that for those attorneys who run their practice, but they need a little bit of that thinking time. You've kind of prepped them. You've come with a specific question, a place where you can start. You are testing how they respond, how you connect over this information. And also, if you get information that's useful for you, if they just give you the same what you already have, or if they have no idea what it's like to be afraid that you're micromanaging your associates, then that's not going to be helpful for you. And so maybe they're not a great mentor for this particular kind of problem. Maybe they'll work for something else. And so I think that going in with this kind of idea is great. And then we come to the third. And so the third is training. And some of this is knowing yourself, knowing how you learn, knowing exactly what problems you want to solve. And some of this is training people to work with you. There are lots of attorneys I know who are ready and willing to be generous with their time. I mean, you can find them in Facebook groups or on Reddit or places like that. They're answering these questions in the forums. And maybe they would be willing to do that real time. Maybe if you bought them a coffee, maybe if you paid them for an hour of their time to go through something specific that you have in a matter that you're working on, maybe they would be willing to do this. And so I think that the training process is about not only knowing what you need, being small and specific as possible, but also being open to whatever else they want to tell you. And then asking for what you need and in a way that you need it. Now, this is the place that trips up a lot of people because there are either two issues. The one, they feel like they're asking for too much and the other attorney won't be able to say no to them, and so they'll avoid them and it'll break down the relationship. And then the other is that they'll ask, but they won't get quite what they need. And so um, the first is, I think it's good to approach every relationship and even every conversation where you have an ask with a, hey, if this it takes too long or if this is too much, please let me know anytime, no hard feelings. And this is specifically what I'm looking for. Do you have 15 minutes to do? And then stick really, really hard to that time. And if you're coming up to the end of 15 minutes, say, hey, this is so great. I'm getting so much information and we're coming up to the 15 minutes. Can you stay longer, or can we leave it here, or this sort of thing, so that you are specifically mindful of the boundaries that you have agreed upon, and you hold them as tightly as possible, like as firmly as possible. I think that this is good as well, that you, for example, don't contact them every time you have a question. This is also a boundary, that you start a list of questions that are important, and maybe you have a regular lunch. You buy them lunch every 2 weeks, every month, and you come and you say, hey, do you mind if I go through my list of questions? These are the things that have come up and this sort of thing. We attorneys love to talk. We went to law school to help people um, to make change in the world, and I almost never have had an experience where an attorney is unwilling to do anything unless they are completely overwhelmed. And so this is part of it too, because there will be a time, a season, where attorneys are available for mentoring and seasons where they are not. And it can be life circumstances, it can be practice circumstances. And so just to be open to the idea that they don't owe you anything. And so, enjoy that. Uh, the the last part of training is also to identify, or begin to identify, the kind of mentor the person is. I myself knew an attorney who was a brilliant mentor and a terrible teacher, like the worst. And so he was incredibly collaborative. He was open and positive and curious and inquisitive and really interested in your learning. And he was terrible at, start here, this is the next step, this is the next step. He just didn't think that way. Like, his mind did not organize step A, step B, step C. And when it did, for example, he was a patent attorney, and so he always used to say to his young associates, start with the claims, because he believed that claims are the essence of an invention. And claims are distillation of what the invention actually is. And so the difficulty for most young associates, most patent lawyers, I think in general, is that the claims are a bit like poetry and everything else is prose, right? The claims are the most um, basic language careful. And so almost every associate I ever knew started with describing the drawings because that helped them work their way around to the claims. And he always said, start with the claims, because in his mind, that's absolutely what made sense. You started with the claims because once you had the essence of the invention, then you could expand out into the prose. Then you could talk about other embodiments, you could do other things. And so this made absolute sense to him. And one of the things that was key when you're learning is, oh, yes, I get why you want to start with the claims. And my brain doesn't work that way. And so being with him as a mentor, he was willing to talk, willing to question, willing to be in a way that I think I was lucky to find in a couple times in my legal career. But also, he was not a teacher. And so personally, I knew to go to him when I wanted to expand what the thinking was around a particular project or a particular matter that I was working on, when I wanted to open up the possibilities. I did not go to him when I wanted to do what is the exact next step, because it was a very long road to get there. And so I think that that end piece, the training piece, is so important, that you help people give you information in a way that works for you, or that you start to recognize who to go for specific information. If I want someone to go, here's step A, here's step B, here's step C, I go to this mentor. If I want someone who will help me expand my idea of the case, of the matter, will help me see possibilities that I may not have even considered, I talk to this attorney. And so this is one of those things where it's like you start to get a feel for this over time, which I think is one of the reasons I recommend that people have more than one mentor. But I also believe that there is a period where you're kind of feeling each other out while you're finding your footing, you're finding how you learn best, you're finding how they teach best, you're finding that what you needed maybe when you first started looking for a mentor is not what you need now. Maybe you need someone who's a business mentor. Maybe you need someone who's really great at client development, that rainmaking mentor. I also think that this is a great time to look sideways. And so if you don't have a relationship with anyone you went to law school with, I encourage you to reach out. I encourage you to reconnect with people, even if it's been 20 years, because the opportunity to connect with each other and teach each other and share information and um, hear about way people work in their practice that may be different from yours, and it may be great and you don't want to do it at all, or it may give you an idea of some improvement, some small or you know monumental change that you can make in your practice that will 10x what you can do. And so this is a great place to look, is to begin to ask specific questions, to find who is on your vibe, who shares in a way you need, to get clear about what you're looking for at the specific time, and give yourself a mechanism to be able to work with someone to be able to get what you need. So I hope this has given you some ideas. I hope you are able to identify mentors. I hope you are able to maybe be a mentor. We'll talk about that another time. And if you have questions about your specific practice area, about um, some of the candidates you've chosen, or what do you do next, or what do you do when things don't seem to be going well, and can you correct it, or do you just let this relationship go? My name is Moira, and I'm a former IP attorney turned legal practice coach. And I have a link in the description below. You can click it, it's free. Well, I'm happy to talk about this sort of thing. If you want to go deeper, let's connect. All right. Happy lawyering.